Hello, welcome back. In the previous videos, we have understood the importance and usage of control statements. Now, in this video, let us understand the very important concept in programming, which is functions. A function is similar to a program that consists of group of statements that are intended to perform a specific task. Thus, when there are several tasks to be performed, the programmer will write several functions. Thus, with the advantages of reusability, code maintenance becoming easier, modularity for programming, we mainly rely on functions. So, let us understand about functions in detail. So, we have understood the importance of control statements, where we have seen the decision control instructions and repetition control instructions, right? We have seen different set of keywords and their usage. Now, before entering into a very important task in programming, whether it is any programming language, it is C, Java, Python or C++, because you need to understand the importance of functions, right? So, we will be discussing those importance of functions, how do we declare function, types of functions and so many properties. But before that, we need to have a quick glance on whatever you are seeing on the screen, comprehension. Because generally, the word comprehension clearly specifies in your English language, suppose you might have taken up any exams or competitive things, you used to have comprehension passages, right? What happens over there? You have a lengthy paragraphs over there, you need to answer the multiple questions, right? Simple. Whatever the word you see in Python, just relate the same thing to a normal English language, the word becomes pretty much easier. Because comprehension works by looping or iterating over items and assigning them to a container, where you just try to write a single line of code. That means with the help of comprehension only, we can take multiple input from a user. That is the reason we did not discuss anywhere how to take multiple input from a user till now. You know how to take single input, whether it is int or float or string, right? Now, we'll use the comprehension technique and we'll try to take multiple input from a user. That's where you have list comprehension, set comprehension, dictionary comprehension, but no tuple comprehension, where you can use list comprehension to tuple, because there is no such case of tuple comprehension. Generally, as tuples are immutable, where we have the concept of generator comprehension. We'll be discussing about generators also once we enter into functions. But you see the syntax here, it is very simple. When you take up list comprehension, it is a simple way of creating list, where you have the syntax in the format of square braces. You see expression for item in sequence. That sequence can be anything. Whatever you take, range function or a list or anything, you just take off each and every value. It's enough of talking, right? Right. So let's go for execution part. Let us directly open your IDLE and start working on it. So I'll open my Python IDLE. Just make sure how do you easily rate it. I hope you are pretty much comfortable by now using this, and we have also seen how to relate by difference between working on interactive mode and scripting mode. So I'll open my scripting mode file, new file, and let me save this by some name. Let me save this as comprehension. Okay, I'll just save it as comprehensions. Now let's understand the importance of first list comprehension. How do we relate list comprehension and how do we generally give input for a date? So my part is simply to just take multiple input from user. Generally, that becomes where you take up expression, for multiple, that expression can be anything, where you take up a sequence. That sequence could be a list or tuple or set or dictionary or a range function, right? So first let's start understanding how do you take list comprehension by just looking at the syntax of it first. Generally, the syntax is very much easier, where people rely mainly on using directly the expression for variable in the sequence. But let me just make it simple. So if you don't want to let that thing, just keep it with triple quotes. That would be easier. So when you go for triple quotes, the syntax could be LST is equal to square brace open, because that is a list comprehension, right? It offers a very effective way. You need not worry. With this only, we'll start understanding how to take multiple input from a user. So generally, this could be your expression for your variable in the sequence. That sequence could be anything. Okay, that sequence could be a list or tuple or set or dictionary, even range function, anything. So till here it could be easier, but you can also extend this so that you can write optional statements where people rely on adding and or conditions, so that you can make some, you can use the same logic whether you write a loop or whether you write a comprehension technique. It's up to user interest. It's not mandatory, but once you are familiar into Python coding part, that's where you are started your journey as Pythonista, it becomes pretty much simpler of using comprehension, and that is a very effective way where you try to relate that thing in the point of memory. Because if you relate a simple word, when I have shown in the PPT point, you see all the values are stored in memory, because this is of list format, right? Basically, when you create a list format, lists are immutable, right? I mean, lists are mutable, sorry. Right, that means where you can add elements and you can remove elements, but tuples are immutable, right? That's where we don't have the concept of tuple comprehension. So this is basic syntax. Now with this, let's start understanding how can we take multiple input from a user. So I'll just close the triple quotes here, because that triple quotes will understand, so that where that will be treated as a string, but if you assign to a variable, that is a string, otherwise it is a description, which you already know. I'll take a variable, I'll open my square brace, my expression is I want to take multiple input, so first I'll relate that as an integer. So int of x for any variable x in that sequence could be your, because you want to, your target is to take multiple input from user, to take multiple input values from a user. That's your target. So for that reason, obviously when I say input, you use your input function, input of, you see validity, that's a built-in function. You can write any customized thing, enter values, right? So that's where you stop it here. So if you don't relate directly, I'll tell you what happens over there. This is not complete because you have given your sequence, and this is optional. That is not mandatory. I need to close one more brace. Yeah. This is not mandatory, where you can increase more conditions. Once you are familiar with it, we can also go with that. I'll tell one more simple example for that. Okay. Now this is according to the syntax, it is correct. Now let me print A, because to see any output you need to just give print, right? So save, and when you start executing this, click on run module. The cursor will blink over there. That means you want to pass some values. So I'll directly give some values without any space or anything. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 9. There you go. You see, every element is stored in the format of a list, because you are passing values side by side, right? So that means you can make some changes here, and even if you want to check the type of it, you can give print of type of A. It's as simple as it is, where you can, if you execute that, then again if you just make some multiple values, automatically each and every value is stored in the format of a list, and you can see the type is class list. This is a very simple way, but why can't I write by giving spaces? Okay, that's what I'll give you, spaces or commas. You see, 1 space, suppose if you execute this, 1 space, 2 space, 4 space, 5, you see, that's where you get a value error, invalid literal for integer with base 10, because you are not mentioning how does this split will work. Yes, so for this you use one more function called as split method. So in split we generally give comma, or if you don't want to give comma, if you want to give space, try in this way. It's all you understand by executing it itself. So execute this, and the cursor blinks over here, 1 space, 2 space, 4 space, 5. There you go. If you want to give space, so mention space in split. Generally, according to human behavior, what do? We generally give comma, right? So we just follow with that. Generally, any person might give, they will generally rely by giving commas only, 1, 2, 4, 5 or any values. You see, every value is stored in the format of a list. That's where list comprehension plays a very key role for the first part of taking multiple input from your user. You can also take by using map function, which we'll be discussing when we go for anonymous functions, but as of now, This is a very simple way to take multiple input from a user. Sir, what if you get any doubt, what if I want to take float or string? Yes, you can take that, you need not worry. Let's do a simple smart work. Let me copy this and let me paste it here. And what happens if I change the int to float here? You can do it. No one will obstruct you. You can just go do it, because the only way to learn Python programming or any programming is debugging. Okay. Now let me save this and let me run. Your cursor blinks. So you can pass normal integer values, but you see the result is stored in the format of float values. So that's where you need to make sense when you are giving float. You can also give float and integer values. The result is stored in the format of float only. What happens if you change the variable name here? Suppose if I give p and execute this once again, enter the values, I'll give 4, 1, 2. Clearly you get name x is not defined, because it will accept the input, but to store the result in the format of a list, you get a name error because the syntax is not clearly matching expression for variable. You see, this variable is not matching with the type. That's the reason you should take the same type. That's where you need to just have a glance. That's about float, that's about integer. The same way you can take about string, right? I've just copy pasted it, and in place of int you can just give str, because int, float, string, whatnot, you can take anything. So save and again execute it. When you click on execute, you see you can pass anything. Suppose if you want to give code, I write my name, I just give some dummy things. You see, everything is stored in the format of a list, but you are taking strings. The type is class list. So this is how you can easily take input from a user, whether it is in the format of integer, float or strings. That's a very easy way. The only thing you need to be worrying is what are the types you are mentioning in split. The best way is to use commas when you split, so that easier the user can easily understand. This is the very easy way so that anyone can understand how to enter multiple values. So this is the first case of using list comprehension. You can have so many examples on that, but our main concern is how does this is really helpful and how does we can use these cases, because it just makes sure what is the expression you are giving and for variable in the sequence. Suppose if you wanted to find the squares of a number, you can do it directly. A is equal to square of a number is power of x comma 2, or you just make sure x square. What are the values? Suppose if you want to get the sum of first 10 squares of first 10 numbers, you can directly give for x in range of, you can mention 1 to 11. You want the squares of 1 to 10. You mention the range and just close the brace, and you can print of a directly. When you give print of a, you can see clearly what is your expression, and this is your variable. You get each and every value printed: 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, 4 square, 5 square, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's as simple as it is. It only depends on user interest, and the result is stored in the format of a list. So this is a very simple example for list comprehension. And to make it more easy, why can't I use the other case of adding optional if? I told you, right, that's what I'll tell you again. Okay, so for that reason, what I'll do is, my task is to generate, just follow the syntax, it will be easier. I want to generate some random numbers. If I want to generate some random numbers, I need to use some randint. So for that, we need to just have some basic things. So we need not discuss about modules, right? So we'll use that point over there. So for this, what I'll do is, I just take one more example where I want to generate all unique combinations of 1, 2, 3. All unique combinations of, start thinking on it, what could be there, 1, 2 and 3, and how many possible ways we can write 1, 2 and 3. You can arrange in so many ways, right? So for that reason, what I'll do is, I just take a simple way to use list comprehension. So 3 numbers, right, 1, 2, 3. So just take it as I comma j comma k. It's as simple as it is. So start writing your for loop. For I in, just give what are the values you can take, 1, 2, 3, store in the list format. Again, what is the next value? For j in, again same combination, right? 1, 2, 3. See, you are using your for loop here because the syntax is optional for and or if. So for j in 1, 2, 3, and again we can use for k in because you want to get all the possible combinations, right? For I in 1, 2, 3, for j in 1, 2, 3, for k in 1, 2, 3. If, then start writing. If I is not equal to j, right? And then you can give j not equal to k because all the values should not be same, right? That's where you want to get unique combination, and k not equal to I. It's as simple as it is. You gave each and every combination, you are used for loop and you are writing if condition. If I not equal to j and j not equal to k and k not equal to j, k not equal to I, sorry. So that's where you are giving all the conditions and we have used AND operator. That means this should match clearly. There you go. And if you want to print off A, you can see the result. It would be very much easier. You see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, all possible unique combinations. How many combinations we got? 6 combinations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is where you can expand. If you want to write the same thing, you need to use multiple for loops, nested loops. So it's up to user interest. How does he generate it, right? This is a very simple use case of list comprehension. So the same way, we'll discuss about the conversion of list comprehension to tuple later. But before that, let's understand the importance of set comprehensions also. Because when you say set, what do? You just replace the square braces with curly braces. Because generally we discuss comprehensions to make sure that it's a very easy way of writing number of lines of code. You just take up set comprehensions. What do? You just replace the square braces with curly braces. Because set will not allow duplicates, right? That's where you see, you need not worry about, because you cannot repeat a set, right? But what you can do is generally, if we go for this technique, you are multiplying each and every value. You are not repeating anything. Just keep that point in mind because we are not violating set properties. This is just set comprehension where we just try to relate the values. But you see the type is stored in the format of a set. So when I give type of A, when you save it, you can clearly understand the difference. See, it is not in ordered format, it's random, right? It's an ordered format. The class is set, right? You can use curly braces. And in the same way, if why can't I use dictionary? You can use, but remember, dictionary is having some pairs, right? Yes, so what do? If you try to add the same thing, just make sure that add a key. What do? Just keep the pair here. X is to x square. There you go. Let's execute this and see the difference. Now you see, you get pair 1 is to 1, 2 is to 4, 3 is to 9, 4 is to 16. That's it. You can use any comprehension technique based on the usage, right? Now, as I told you, we cannot have tuple comprehension because I will tell you the reason is, we just make sure that we convert conversion of, we can use list to or tuple to list comprehension. Because basically what happens, why can't we have tuple comprehension? I'll practically prove it. Let me just copy the same thing, and instead of curly braces, we'll use parentheses. Because generators are also iterators, they don't, because list will store all the values in memory. It only depends upon according to the usage when it comes to generator. Let me just execute this. For your surprise, you can't extract the values. You see, you get a generator object. That is where you have the new concept of generators. This is also an iterator where instead of directly keeping parentheses, we need to convert that thing to another format. That's where generally we can use next method, which will be understanding in generators, because generators are also an iterator where efficiently they allocate, because they just store the values and they go in a fly. That's where generators. So here you can go in another way, you can keep it as a list. That's it. There you go. Automatically, you can easily convert the values into list. You see, that's where we can convert list tuple to list comprehension by using list built-in function, or else you can also use one way where we can use for loop. That's another way. How do you extract the values from a generator? So for that reason, what I can do is, but the thing is, you will not have in a group, you can just use a for loop to extract each and every value. That's it. So for I in A, print of I, and you keep both of them as comments. There you go. When you execute that, you get each and every value out of it. You are trying to unpack the values, right? So this is how you can take comprehensions, because comprehensions are very easier to just make sure that you write a single line of code. That is the very easiest part. Okay, so you can use any format, but without parenthesis. If you use parenthesis, that becomes a generator. You need to convert that thing to list by using list built-in function, or we write a for loop, because generators are also iterators where they don't store the values, they just go in a fly. That's where if you want to take multiple input from a user, you can use this directly. Just mention what is the type, whether you are taking integer, float, or string. That's it. You can use the same technique to take multiple input values.